So now that it's all dry, you can see here the detail it's gotten a million times better. The washing has brought out all the little crevices and the lines and the fine details that you just couldn't get with the brush. Now, after this model is dry, and I stress it has to be completely dry, I left this for about 20-30 minutes just to be sure. And now you're going to do the last two final steps. One of the final steps is dry brushing. So if you've never done dry brushing before, I'm using a Citadel specific, it's a dry brush. Here's what the tips kind of look like on dry brushes. Here's what the tips look like on dry brushes. Some are more round, but they're usually short, flat, and they're not fine pointed. And so don't get a brush that you like to dry brush with, because a dry brush is going to get destroyed because you're basically rubbing the brush like this hard on the thing, so you're making the bristles all crazy. So don't get a nice brush that you really like. Specifically get a dry brush from Citadel, or get one with like a flat brush head like this. All right. So any paint can be used to dry brush, any color you want. Citadel is nice enough to supply you with actually dry brush paints made specifically for dry brushing. These are the only paints, I think, in their entire collection, except for like coats and glazes and washes and other technical stuff, that I would not recommend painting as is, because they're made a specific way. This is a very dry paint. It's just dry. Like, look, you can look inside of it. It's dry. It's not like the other ones at all. It's like, it looks like it's almost like, it has a consistency of almost like Jello. So you don't want to paint base with this. This is specifically for dry brushing, but you can dry brush with anything, and I'm going to show you that too, because I'm going to dry brush with white. This is an older skull, right? It's called something else now. I forget what it's called, but as you can see, the consistency difference is a lot different. This actually looks like paint. It's actually wet. It actually moves around. But I'm going to do the Longbeard gray first. Do the Longbeard gray first. Now I'm going to show you this because, like, look, it looks like Jello when you poke it. It bounces off. So we're going to take a little bit and rub our brush in it like this. We're going to get a clump of it on things, then we're going to kind of wipe off the excess here. And then also, what I like to do sometimes is on the back of the base, I'd like to wipe off the excess here. Just to make sure you don't want a lot on the dry brush. So what you're going to do, after you get off the excess, is you're going to lightly brush, like lightly scrape the top of the model, or the areas you want to dry brush. In this case, I'm going to be dry brushing the hair, the Longbeard gray, the body, the bluer gray, and then I'm going to go over it one more time with white. So as you can see, right, I'm going to dry brush. See, I'm already getting some highlights. See, look at the highlights. You can do this. You're not brushing it on. You're kind of just scraping it on. You're kind of going back and forth quickly. I'm trying to get all the hair. This back of the base there. Do that. You can get a little bit more. You can get a lot of a dry brush, But you can see here, so look, you can see there, see there's, that's dry brush. That's not. I know it's kind of hard to see a difference on the camera because it's kind of subtle, but it adds a lot of highlights to the hair, as before it's just kind of dark. So you just keep doing that back and forth. A lot of dry brush paint goes a long way, so go easy on it. Don't go crazy. Obviously, the lighter you want it, the more you can dry brush it. The more highlights you want, the brighter you want the highlights. Typically, you always want to dry brush lighter, and that's a really important factor. So if something is like blue, and I wouldn't dry brush black over it unless you're going for a very specific look. For example, I did Molten Lava once where I painted everything orange and then dry brush black. It looked perfect. But sometimes it doesn't always turn out the way you want it to, because the darker colors are harder to work with when you're dry brushing. So use lighter colors when you're dry brushing. You always want to go lighter than the color you are now. It makes it pop more. All right. So we dry brushed the Longbeard gray, and that looks pretty good. But I want it to pop even more. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use white. And this is not a specific dry brush paint. This is just a white paint. It's wet. It's wet. It's a wet paint. See, it's a wet paint. It's not like the other dry brush paint at all. Actually, All right, sorry, it's a little thick because I had to add water to it because it was kind of dry. So now you can see on the back, there's white. Boom, 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 right? So now you're gonna, on this, I usually take a piece of paper and I just kind of do this. Make little circles, kind of get it off. And then I do the same thing. I brush. I lightly brush the places I want to be white. Don't try to make it wet because then you're just painting. This is a little wet, but that's the effect I was looking for. It's still a little wet because then you're just painting over it. You want to just kind of gently brush back and forth, up and down, against the grain, with the grain, all the places you want to have that color. Obviously, the more of that color you want it, the longer you want to dry brush, the more you want to go over it again and again. That's how you dry brush, basically. I'm going to do it one more time. And make sure when you're dry brushing, make sure you get all the water off of it when you clean it. When you dip in water, you have the color. Make sure you get all the water. You want this dry. You want the brush dry. Ironically enough, that's why I call it dry brush. So now I'm going to take the blue, or the gray blue, right? This Framing Gray, and I'm going to dry brush the skin. Again, this is not a paint specifically called, and that's not specifically a dry brush paint. It's just a regular paint. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to go over all the skin areas, maybe even the bone. There's not a lot on here. I picked a model, of course, that has the least amount of blue skin, but you guys can get the idea. So you go over it, back and forth, gently rubbing all the paint off the brush, dryly back and forth. My fingers are getting covered in white underneath this base because there's white paint under it. There you go. So that's what we call dry brushing, right? And it looks great. I mean, it adds so much to the color and the depth of the model and makes it look so much more just detailed. So now the last and the final step, get this paint off my hand, is what I call the highlighting part. This is the highlighting step. So highlighting step is a step that I skipped for years because it was hard. It was hard to do. You had to be very accurate with your brush strokes. It's also, you know, this model looks great. But what you're doing with highlighting in this case is you're going over abrased edges and you're kind of pushing the color you originally painted it on top of it so it sticks out more. So for example, the only thing I'm going to highlight on this model is the bone. I'm going to leave the muscles the way they are. I'm going to leave the hair the way it is. Everything else, but everything that's bone is going to get a highlight. So I'm going to take the Screaming Skull paint that I've been using this entire time. And of course, this is going to be different for each model that you guys work with and stuff like that. And you're just going to kind of lightly go over the abrased edges. And you can kind of see where the abrased edges are on the model. Now remember, you're not painting over it. You're not just dumping in and painting over everything. You're still letting the wash that you used earlier stay in the lower parts of the model to, you know, for shadows. That's basically how you get your shadows. So you're just basically outlining the parts of the model so they stick out more. You gotta go really slow with this one. That bone was easy to do because it was big. This one's really tiny. Do that. You can kind of see how much depth it adds when you're just highlighting something as simple as like a fingernail. And this brush is actually a little big for highlighting, especially for this type of model. So watch that arm right there, right? I'm gonna There you go. See, like you're not covering the bone. You're not covering it. You're not painting it all over again. You're just lightly highlighting it, running over the abrased parts or the line straight down. Let's do this one. I'm trying to give you guys a good view so you can see it, so it may be hard for me to paint at this angle. So it makes a lot of good models look even better when you do this. All right. Back here. This bone got really dark back here. So the highlights are really going to stick out. And I believe this is a piece of bone too. Go back here. I know it's hard to see because you're not getting as close as I am, but like I'm just getting I'm lightly lining the outsides of the bone where there are not the recesses. I'm not painting the entire thing. I'm just lightly going over it with the highlights. The easiest one to do is the teeth, right? So I'm just going to go over the teeth again. Blop. I'm almost dotting the teeth, like just dot, adding dots to the teeth. Dot, dot, dot. Moving over here. Dot, dot. See, this is a really clear color because I'm taking one or two dots, dot, to stick on, dot, dot, dot. Trying to see if I can get this closer for you guys. It's just really hard to do it this close to the camera without gasping. So dot, dot. I'm not even really brushing it. I'm just gently tapping it on. And then so the head is actually okay. You can give the head highlights if you want. Like put some like maybe up here on the brow. Go around. Something like that, just to give it a little bit more of a kick. There's a lot of little bones on this side. Wet my brush because the paint's kind of drying a tad. On this side, I'm just going to highlight the top. See the top, the little top bone? We go around and highlight that. So we go over here again. Make it that side. The claws on the bottom. Kind of dotting the knuckles a little bit. Over here I have to do it again because it looks kind of to do another coat right here, right there, right there, right there. I said I'm not the world's best painter, but I understand the concepts. I'm gonna get the back feet. You know, it's again, I'm sorry guys, I know it's hard to see. I'm doing the best I can with what I got. I'm just basically, I'm dotting. I'm just adding a dot of paint. Dot, dot. Maybe another layer there. Dot. Over here. That's abrased. That's abrased. And I've come a long way. I mean, like I think my friend Dave taught me a lot about painting. He's actually really good. Trevor too. They're both really good. Some of my friends are both really good at painting. And I learned a lot from them. And then a lot of it is just repetition, guys. You'll get better the more you do it. Like with anything else in life, the more you practice, the more you use it every day, the better you will get at it. Don't be scared about ruining your model. Models can always be repainted. You can always test on other models too, like crappy ones you don't care about. Or if your friend has any lying around, hey, do you have any Imperial Guard, or do you have any So if you don't use, can I prime it and paint it and see if something looks good? And he'll be like, oh, of course, if he's cool. I'm sure he will be. Unless he's a jerk. I'm going to tap. These things kind of got covered by the dry brush, so we're going to tap them again. All right, guys. Kind of going around it one more time, making sure everything looks good on it. Like I'm happy with it. I'm pretty happy with it. Like there's some stuff, obviously, like I said, I'm not the best painter in the galaxy. There's some stuff in there that's not blending perfectly, but you know what? This is how I paint. Everyone's gonna have different skill sets and different paints. Where is my cap to this? So these points is a fun thing to mention too. The ones with the pointy ends, these ones, they have little cases. So be very careful when you put them in, because if you don't put them in right, pieces of fur will bend out and then they won't match. Fun fact. Anyway, guys, so yeah, that's it. That's everything. Now this is a done model. I want to also do a basing video. Maybe I'll do a basing video of how I personally base. These guys will have snow videos, but pretty impressive, right? So you go from pretty impressive, though, guys. You go from something like this, right? Just, I mean, base colors looks like shit, right? You know, whatever. To this. You know, so I mean, and everyone can do it. It just takes time and practice. Anyway, you guys, thanks for watching my video. You know, I like to just put, like I said, this is my personal channel. I just like to put stuff up for fun. I hope this helped you. If it did, let me know. Otherwise, I will talk to everybody later.